The 13th century marked a turning point in world history, dominated by the unstoppable rise of the Mongol Empire. Descendants of the legendary Genghis Khan, these fierce nomadic warriors from the steppes of Central Asia had transformed warfare with unprecedented brutality and strategic brilliance. Every kingdom, empire, and civilization they encountered either capitulated or faced utter annihilation. By the mid-1200s, their dominions stretched from the Pacific shores of China to the edges of Eastern Europe, making them the largest contiguous land empire ever known. In 1258, the Mongols delivered their most devastating blow yet, the siege and sacking of Baghdad. This ancient city had long stood as the beacon of Islamic culture, scholarship, and wealth, a jewel of civilization famed for its sprawling libraries, renowned scholars, and prosperous marketplaces. Under the command of Hulagu Khan, the Mongol forces surrounded Baghdad, launching a calculated and relentless siege. The Abbasid Caliph, al-Mustasim, tragically underestimated the Mongol threat. Instead of mustering a unified defense or seeking timely reinforcements, he relied on empty diplomacy and naive confidence that the caliphate's religious prestige would deter invasion. His court was rife with incompetence, and his vizier, Ibn al-Alqami, is believed to have further misled him, weakening any organized resistance. The result was catastrophic. After a brief siege, the Mongols breached the city walls. What followed was one of the most horrific massacres in medieval history. For 7 days, the Mongols looted, burned, and butchered. Conservative estimates suggest that at least 200,000 people were killed, though some accounts put the death toll at over 1 million. The scale of destruction was almost apocalyptic. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash. The Grand Library of Baghdad, containing centuries of accumulated knowledge in science, philosophy, medicine, and literature, was destroyed. The Tigris River was said to run black with ink from the drowned manuscripts and red with the blood of scholars, clerics, and civilians. The fall of Baghdad symbolized more than just military defeat. It was the collapse of Islamic civilization's intellectual heart, shaking the very foundations of the Muslim world. This once glorious center of learning and culture had been brought to ruin not only by the Mongol onslaught, but by the caliph's fatal arrogance and failure to unify the Islamic world in the face of an existential threat. Fear surged through the lands of Islam. Fragmented states across Syria, Egypt, and North Africa watched in horror as the Mongol armies advanced westward, their reputation preceding them like a dark, unstoppable storm. The political landscape in these regions was already volatile, rife with internal divisions, petty rivalries, and short-sighted power struggles. But amid the chaos, one man would rise from the shadows of captivity. In the heart of Egypt, far from the smoking ruins of Baghdad, lived a Mamluk, a warrior slave, who had once been sold as chattel and now stood at the crossroads of destiny. His name was Saif al-Din Qutuz. As Sultan Qutuz was born Mahmud ibn Mamdud, reportedly the nephew of the Khwarezmian ruler Jalal al-Din, who had fought a prolonged but ultimately losing battle against the Mongols. After his uncle's death and the collapse of the Khwarezmian state in 1231, Qutuz was among the many children taken by the Mongols, sold into slavery, and brought to Damascus. From there, he entered the complex and often brutal world of Mamluk servitude. Eventually, Qutuz was brought to Cairo and became part of the household of Izz al-Din Aybak, a prominent Mamluk leader. Qutuz rose through the ranks quickly, becoming one of Aybak's most trusted men. His intelligence, loyalty, and capability distinguished him in a system where only the strongest and most politically savvy survived. After the fall of the Ayyubid dynasty in Egypt, a power vacuum led to the brief rule of Shajar al-Dur. Though effective, her rule faced resistance, and she married Aybak, who then took control. However, internal rivalries continued. One of the most powerful Mamluk leaders, Faris ad-Din Aktai, grew increasingly independent and threatening. When Aybak moved to eliminate him, Qutuz played a direct role in the assassination, his first appearance in the political arena. After Aybak's death, Egypt briefly came under the nominal rule of his young son, Al-Mansur Ali, but the real authority lay with Qutuz, who eventually deposed the boy in 1259 and assumed the sultanate. His justification was clear. Egypt was under imminent threat, and he believed the country needed a strong leader to prepare for war. In 1258, the Mongols under Hulagu sacked Baghdad and executed the Abbasid Caliph. It sent shockwaves across the Muslim world. The Mongols then advanced into Syria, seizing Aleppo and Damascus with little resistance. Egypt was now one of the few remaining powers left standing, but internally it was fragmented and unprepared. When a delegation from Syria arrived in Cairo asking for help, Qutuz gathered scholars, jurists, and military leaders to discuss a response. The influential scholars gave religious justification for raising funds from the public, but only after the ruling class had exhausted its own wealth. This helped solidify support for Qutuz's decision to confront the Mongols. Four Mongol envoys rode into Cairo under the banner of Hulagu Khan. They came bearing a threat from the King of Kings of the East and West, the Great Khan, to Qutuz the Mamluk, who fled to escape our swords. You should think of what happened to other countries and submit to us. We will shatter your mosques and reveal the weakness of your God, and then we'll kill your children and your old men together. At present, you are the only enemy against whom we have to march. Qutuz received them, listened to their words, and dismissed them without reply. Then, behind closed doors, he gathered his council. Tension hung in the room like smoke. Most advised caution. The Mongols were too strong. Submit now, stall for time. Others argued for resistance, but their voices were fewer. Qutuz said nothing at first. He looked at each man in the room, then rose to his feet. "Prepare the army," he said. "Cairo will not submit." No more words. He ordered the four envoys to be seized, executed, and beheaded. Their heads were hung at the gates of Cairo, on public display. A message written in blood: the Mamluks would not bow. The battle that will change the course of history is about to begin. On the morning of September 3, 1260, in the Jezreel Valley near Ain Jalut, a small spring between Baisan and Nablus in modern-day Palestine, the Mamluk army under Sultan Qutuz faced off against a Mongol force led by Kitbuka, one of Hulagu Khan's top generals. The Mongols, up to this point, had been nearly unstoppable. They had burned Baghdad, dismantled the Abbasid Caliphate, and overrun the major cities of Syria. Most Islamic rulers had either fled, surrendered, or chosen neutrality. Qutuz was among the first to stand and fight, not in desperation, but as a calculated military decision. The Mamluk army had marched out from Egypt weeks earlier, navigating through Sinai and Gaza, before positioning themselves near the Jordan Valley. Qutuz had already sent detachments ahead to secure Gaza and scout the Mongol positions. Baybars, who was also a slave warrior, just like Qutuz, is now at his service, played a key role in organizing the vanguard and preparing the battlefield. The Mamluks deliberately chose Ain Jalut for its geography. Unlike the flat steppes where Mongol cavalry thrived, Ain Jalut was full of narrow passes, hills and trees, terrain that limited the Mongols' ability to maneuver and surround their enemy, a tactic they usually relied on. Baybars led the first attack with a mobile force, engaging the Mongols and then staging a feigned retreat. Kitbuka, confident from his past victories, took the bait and ordered a full pursuit. The Mongols advanced into the valley, only to find themselves boxed in by the terrain. As they pressed forward, the main Mamluk force, which had been waiting in ambush, closed in. At a critical moment, when parts of the Mamluk lines started to buckle under Mongol pressure, Qutuz rode directly into the front ranks. Accounts say he threw off his helmet so his men could see him, lifted his sword, and shouted. It wasn't a call for glory. It was a reminder of what was at stake. His cry echoed through the ranks, a plea and a command at once. For many soldiers, especially the former slaves in the Mamluk Corps, this wasn't just a political struggle. It was a defense of their identity, their homes, and the last stronghold of organized Muslim resistance. That moment steadied the army. The Mamluks rallied, reorganized, and pushed back. Kipaka fought fiercely. Mongol sources note that he refused to retreat, but he was eventually captured and executed. The Mongols retreated, fully and decisively, for the first time since their rampage across the Islamic world began. Syria was no longer in their hands. The illusion of their invincibility, built on decades of unchecked conquest, had finally broken. The victory at Ain Jalut saved the entire structure of Muslim rule from collapsing. For the Mamluks, it was a defining moment of legitimacy. A ruling class of former slaves had just delivered the most important victory in a generation and preserving a civilization. But Qutuz would not live to see the impact of what he had done. On the return journey to Cairo, he was assassinated, almost certainly by Baybars, the very commander who had fought beside him at Ain Jalut. Some say it was over a broken promise. Qutuz had allegedly offered Baybars control of Aleppo, then refused. Others say it was pure ambition. Whatever the motive, the man who led Egypt in its hour of greatest danger was gone within weeks of his triumph. But his choice to fight, when others would have submitted, changed the course of history and saved the Muslim nation.